Hey, I've been wanting to record a couple of videos for a while now to share out with our 2016 PSC Boys Navy families. My hope is that sharing these out with our families and the adults in the team and parents in the team might answer some questions that they've got about, what's going on, what are their players being asked to do by me, by coach, and also maybe interesting for some of our players who like learning through video format and seeing pictures. This is stuff we've talked about as a team for a while, and some parents have also joined into some sessions and taken advantage of some opportunities where I've invited them over to listen in as we lay out cones and talk through some of the stuff in training sessions. But everybody learns differently, and I thought a video format could be something interesting to try for some of our families and some of our players. So for this first video, let's jump in and talk about 7v7 formations and positions. Okay, here we go. All right, before I jump in to 7v7, let's actually take a moment to talk about 11v11 because that's where all of this starts, right? Back in the day, there was no 7v7. There was no 9v9 and youth soccer. All soccer was just 11v11. And there were no subs allowed at that point in time. And so what happened was a numbering system was devised to mark and indicate every player what their position was on the field, what area of the field they were responsible for, and what types of things they did. So this is back in 1928 when no subs were allowed, and it was very easy to do this just by using the numbers 1 through 11, of course, because there were no subs allowed. It made it really simple. So the way that we look at this today is we're going to work from down the field moving up, right? Going in this direction is how I'm going to show this and lay it out today. And the first one we're going to see is our goalkeeper, and they're going to be in the number 1 jersey, the furthest back down the field, okay? And then we're going to move through this defensive line, and we're going to work across this line here, which is our defensive line. We'll start on the outsides with the 2 and the 3, the right halfback and left halfback, or right defender and left defender. These guys are going to be on the outside of the field, and then they're going to work with the 4 and the 5, who are the center right back and center left back, or center backs. Then we move up into the midfield, and that's going to be these 3 central players, which is quite a lot for us in the 7v7 format, of course. But in 11v11, it's not uncommon to have these 3 players here. And oftentimes one of them, the 6, would be a little bit more defensive. The 10 would maybe be a little bit more attacking, and the 8 would be box to box. So everything from box to box, getting up and back down the field. And then finally that offensive line, the forwards, or the 7, 11, and 9. These 3 connecting together, creating a lot of offensive threats and trying to create opportunities, with the 9 oftentimes being a token goal scorer, and the 7 and 11 working in the open spaces on the side, certainly getting into goal as well when they can, but also serving a lot of balls to create opportunities for the 9. Okay, let's talk about some of the names and positional numbers when we move into the 7v7 format. So right away out of the gate, of course, going from 11v11 to 7v7, we have to eliminate 4 roles. This is actually a good thing. We're doing this at 7v7 because it helps simplify the game for our guys who are learning it, right, for the first time and haven't been playing it for years and years. It also allows them to get more touches on the ball, which helps them develop the really important skills very, very quickly. And then lastly, it's a smaller space, which makes sense because our guys have less leg strength, maybe a little bit less endurance. And as we shrink that space down to be smaller, then we also don't want 11 guys crammed in that space. So let's remove some players and reduce some of the congestion. First, let's focus on the center of the field. I talked about the 3 central players we have in here. You can see right out of the gate, we're going to reduce that from 3 down to just 1. So, we can pick whoever we want in here. It doesn't matter so much, but let's cut out 2 of those players. Here I did the 6 and the 10. So you're left with the 8, who you're going to have slide in central and say, hey, you needed to cover all of this responsibility. We're going to call that box to box. So, if we drew it from here all the way down to here, that's accurate, but oftentimes what we'll actually do is we'll take this line out and we'll draw another line over here and say, look, you are everything up and down, box to box. Not so much in these outside areas. We're going to have other players responsible for covering those. The central guy is going to cover all the space down the middle of the field. Okay, let's clean this up a little bit and talk about the halfback or outside backs. This is going to be the 2 and the 3 right over here that you saw me take out, or the right back and left half back, right half back, bunch of different names. But the 2 and the 3, we're going to take those out, which is going to be scary right away because now we're left with just 2 in the back, of course. And we don't have any defensive position out here in this whole area of the field, and same thing over here. So what we'll do next is we're going to shift our wing players back into midfield players. Our 7 and our 11 are going to pull back and wide, and they're going to line up more in a line with our center mid over here on the outsides. And then we're going to ask these guys to cover this whole space inline to inline on the outsides. That's going to be a lot of running, and we'll talk about that a lot in player roles and responsibilities. That's the numbering system for 7v7. One special note here, for whatever reason, we in the soccer community decided not to talk about this last central player as an 8, even though in my opinion, it truly is an 8. For whatever reason, we decided to actually generally talk about it as the 10 still. So a lot of times you'll see people talk about the 10 and it, draw an X through the 8. So the 10 is the center mid that's left. But really we're talking about a box-to-box midfielder in most situations. Okay, let's talk about some common formations here at 7v7. This is important stuff. If your player played with a different club or plays with a different club at some point, this could be something that they do. When we talk about our formations, we always start in the back, just like our numbering system. So we're going to start back here and move forward. But we're going to take the goalkeeper as a given. It's just too important of a position to not have a goalkeeper. And it's so important, in fact, that we're limited to having just one. So we'll always assume exactly one because that's the most that we're allowed to have, and it's such an important position. And of course, this goalkeeper is able to use his hands, the only player on the field who can use his hands within the bounds of our penalty area. Okay, so we'll ignore this guy because he's the most important, or one of the most important on the field, and he's a given, and we know we're going to have him. Then we'll start in the back. So if we talk about a 3-3, we're going to have that one goalkeeper. We're going to start in the back with 3 defenders. So we see we have our 4 and our 5, and we've pulled back that center mid here in this case to end up with 1, 2, 3 defenders, okay? And then we're going to have 3 attackers. So our 9 has dropped in a little bit, and we keep our 7 and our 11 on the outsides, and these guys are now our 3 attackers. It's a very simple formation. It's not a bad way to start. A lot of clubs or teams will use this really early on in the soccer days because it is so simple. Our group skipped past this because there's a better option we'll talk about in a bit. Next up, if we talk about the 2v2 or 2-2-2, what we'll see here is this one still has our one goalkeeper, of course, and we're going to work from the back of the field up. So a 2-2-2 is going to mean our one goalkeeper, our 2 defenders back here. So that's our 4 and our 5 as center backs. We'll have our 2 midfielders. So let's say that's our 9 and our 10. Maybe we just pulled our 9 back here to play in with our 10. And we're going to have our 2 attackers, which are our 7 and 11. Not many groups will use this, and there are good reasons. It's not the strongest formation because what ends up happening a lot is you don't have any natural width in the field, and you end up trying to fabricate this. And what happens is, when the ball's over, let's say it's over in this area right here, right? A lot of times what will happen is, since we don't have a naturally wide player, this guy will think, oh, I better get back and wide to help out. And this guy thinks, well, certainly I'm the closest to the ball. I better get out here. And this guy thinks, hey, I'm the left defender. It's on my side. It's on my half. I better go defend. And what we end up here with is 3 late arriving players, okay? And that means the other team has 2 options. Either 1, since we're late arriving, they already got into this dangerous space before we got there, and they were a step ahead, and now we're playing catch up, and they're likely to score a goal. Or 2, if we happen to cut this area off, we still brought 1, 2, 3 players, and that's too many, and now we've overcommitted. So a savvy team will very quickly find their center mid, or maybe find a center back, get the ball back to them, and find a way to get back over into this area of the field or this area of the field where we have less numbers. So that's a 2-2-2. Again, quite simple. Sounds very balanced, but you don't have much width, or if you have width, you don't have central play. So not the best option again. That's going to take us forward to what we use in our group, and is my favorite formation to play in 7v7. That's the 2-3-1. Remember, we've got our very important goalkeeper. We're going to work from the back going forward. So the 2 is going to be our 2 center backs, or our 4 and our 5. We're going to have 3 across the middle, of course. And that's going to be, the 10. And sometimes we'll play like a 6 if we need to be more defensive. Oftentimes we'll actually play like an 8. Or you might have me say you might hear me say play the 10, and that's going to have them actually push up into the attack more. And we've got our 7 right outside mid or outside right mid, or right halfback, and our left outside mid, left halfback, outside left mid, all meaning the same thing. The 7 and 11 playing out on the widths of the field, giving us that natural width to play in. And then finally, of course, the 1 attacker. And his job is going to be, he does need to move laterally quite a bit in here to cover this space, and find the open gaps in behind the defense to try to play into. And certainly if he can receive the ball centrally, that's a great place to receive the ball and go to goal or lay off. Okay, that's the 2-3-1. The other note that I'll have on the 2-3-1 is that it progresses very nicely and naturally into the 9v9 format when we need to add 2 players back in, which then of course progresses nicely into the 11v11 format. So everything that we're doing right now, building with the 2-3-1, is because it makes sense right now in 7v7, and because as we think about our 4s and our 5s and our 7s and 11s and all these guys in the field, and we start thinking about where we might add players in the future, all of a sudden this starts making sense and can really build into an 11v11 format. Up next, I won't get to cover in this video, but we'll talk about player roles and responsibilities. And of course, I'll focus on that 2-3-1 because it is the formation that we primarily play in our group. We'll talk about the 1, or the goalkeeper. We'll talk about those 4s and 5s, those central defensive players. And of course, the 10, or the 6 or the 8, and our 7 and 11 outside midfielders, and then our attacking 9 or striker. We'll talk about what each of these are doing, what their roles and responsibilities are, what those look like in a 2-3-1, and maybe even get into some character traits that can be interesting to observe in our players as they're playing on the field. That's it for now. Thanks for following along. I hope this is interesting for our adults in the group, and maybe for some of our players as well. I'm going to ask our guys to hopefully watch this with their adults. And yeah, would love to see what your parents and your adults think about this, guys, next time we're in a training session. Okay, that's it, everybody. Thanks a lot for the time.